Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to White Space, where we're talking through the week's news in data centres. Now, Bill, the top news this week comes from Paris, doesn't it?
It's revolution time in Paris. It's quite remarkable. In fact, this story has got profound implications for data centres because an Interxion data centre outside of Paris, La Courneuve, a suburb of Montreal, has withdrawn, the admin court of the suburb has withdrawn planning permission for Interxion to operate this 132 million euro data centre. That means that they've got 2 months to appeal against this decision, and the planning permission is revoked. Well, who knows what could happen? They might have to move the data centre, they might have to close it down, they might have to repurpose it. They could win, of course, but it shows what's really interesting about this is as data centres move to the edge, and we did other stories this week about micro data centres moving out to the edge of the network, more of these data centres have to be built. So this problem could occur all over the place and could even affect data centres elsewhere that are already built near suburbs.
Yes. I mean, this is an already built data centre. It's been running for 3 years. And now it's had its planning permission removed.
Yeah. So it takes even the French 3 years to close down something.
Because it's right near where people are living.
Well, one of the stories in the French newspaper showed the data centre and the road, and literally they have the generators, the gensets of the chillers, maybe 3 meters away from people's front rooms and bedrooms. So they've been campaigning, I would imagine, from day one, because you have to test generators and they make quite a bit of noise.
But yes, but as you say, the issue here is it's close to people, and maybe not so much in the case of this one. Maybe it's not really considered an edge data center, but the whole data center industry is developing these edge centers whose raison d'être is to be near where people are, and if then people don't want them near them, what do we do?
Well, it's the classic human dilemma, isn't it? We want more. We want to wear stuff that talks to us and tells me how sweaty I am in my marathon run and how my heart rate's going. And to do that, you have to have them near you. But when you put them near us, we go, oh, no, not beside me. Yeah. I got a phone call from one of the investors in this data centre from New York, and they're saying, what's going to happen now? So people who've spent money on this are rather scared. Very fascinating story.
Well, I've got the story of a repurposed building that is going to become a data centre, we expect, or maybe it could become something else. But it was auctioned off this week for $20 million, but nobody yet knows who bought it.
Oh.
What we do know is it's in Eugene, Oregon, and it used to be a semiconductor factory owned by Hynix, the RAM manufacturer, who you know very well, I'm sure, Max.
Yes.
And when the auction happened, a TV company spotted a website saying, "We're going to build a data centre in this facility," and made the obvious assumption that these were the people that had won the auction. It turned out they weren't. They were people who had an option on it. The option had lapsed. That's why the auction happened, and they were allowed to keep their listing up about building a data centre until the auction happened, just in case they won.
Wishful thinking.
Right. So the statement from them is rather beautiful. It says, from the company's called True Data Centres, and so the question is, who is building this data centre? Is it True? But what the man from True says is, to the best of my knowledge, our group did not submit the winning bid for the Hynix plant.
Let's hope he doesn't work in the finance department.
I can see how that happens, because after the bids close, the winning bid is chosen, but then they have to substantiate it. The escrow process goes through. So it's entirely possible that they didn't submit the winning bid, but if the others fall over some legislative hurdle, they may end up owning it after all. So, it could be true.
By default. Well, we have to find out what happens there.
Yeah, get to the truth of it.
Right.
Meanwhile, the US nuclear administration is buying more supercomputers, and I love this story because the US nuclear administration is the shining beacon in the world of supercomputing, and the reason why they are is as follows. So basically, they have to look out after the US nuclear stockpile, but they can't do underground testing. And the brilliant idea was, we're going to do the testing, but we're going to do it digitally, virtually. So we're going to still blow up the bombs, but we're going to do it, it's nobody gets harmed. And they are building what are expected to be the fastest supercomputers in the world in sort of partnership with IBM and NVIDIA. But they've just submitted an order for a truckload of Open Compute kit. And this is Open Compute adopted for high performance computing from people called Penguin Technologies, I believe. American company, and it's going to be one of the largest OCP clusters in the world, and some very interesting hardware there, because basically every sort of 1U server can host essentially 6 of Intel's latest chips, because they've taken all of the extra stuff out of it, just like Open Compute hardware does. And just crazy levels of performance. And it's going to happen over the next 3 years. So they're going to build it out gradually. And they have 2 programs. So one is for the really demanding stuff. And Open Compute kit, unfortunately, is not part of that. It's part of the more sort of like everyday commodity hardware, and they used to have this giant sort of Linux cluster based on traditional servers, and they're replacing that now because it's become too old. So
because Penguin also do some really advanced stuff with liquid cooling.
Yes, they do. Yes, and I think some liquid cooling is going to be used in this deployment as well.
All right, because Penguin have got to deal with Acertec on that, I think.
From liquid cooling to liquidizing.
But, as you say, the whole point of this is to simulate nuclear weapons instead of actually flying around and dropping them places.
Yeah.
And this is a good week to think of what a good idea that is, because 60 years ago, this week, America accidentally dropped nuclear bombs on Spain.
And this was captured in a film as well, wasn't
Well,
it?
you might feel that dropping nuclear bombs on Spain in '66 wasn't, given it was technically a fascist country at the time.
Of course it was, yes. Franco was still alive.
Yes, that's right.
So what happened there?
It was an accident. It was an accident. There was a mid-air collision with a long-range nuclear bomber which was being refueled. And the pilot of the bomber lived, but a lot of the other people up there, including the crew of the refueling plane, were killed. Okay. The bombs dropped to Earth at a fishing village and it didn't detonate, so there was no nuclear explosion. But it's hit the news this week because 50 years on, pretty much exactly 50 years on, I believe, I think next year will be 50 years. The States has agreed to clean it up.
50 years? What have they been doing for 50 years?
Yeah, so basically do it in simulation and you don't have to worry about the cleanup.
I would imagine like really big fishing village,
Okay, maybe there's a benefit.
Yeah. Okay, what also happened this week? Sort of the rumors of the death of HP Helion have been slightly exaggerated. So HP has killed off its Helion public cloud in the US. Some people reported it as if HP is killing off the Helion project. That's not the case. Right. But they did run a public cloud service in the US, which is like a seriously weird idea for us in Europe because we've never heard about HP public cloud, right? But yes, in Europe they took a different route. They basically they sort of linked everyone they sold Helion to into this network. And essentially it's called Cloud 28 Plus, and anyone can go and sort of like through HP and buy public cloud services from this network. So same idea, public cloud providers, but HP sort of like serves as a broker for this marketplace.
Cloud 28 Plus.
Yeah.
It sounds like a sort of young person's holiday destination.
Not so young as well, I'm 28.
It's all a matter of perspective.
How long do you have to? How long do the users have of Cloud 28 Plus to get off the cloud.
No, Cloud, that's the thing. Cloud 28 is alive and well. The American users of HP's public cloud have until January to clear up. That's it. They've stopped accepting new registrations, and they're still saying Helion is amazing, but they're not going to be using it themselves.
So Helion is still a product. You can still buy it. You can implement your private clouds, your hybrid clouds, and everything else on it. It's based on OpenStack.
Yes.
For all we know, it's probably as good as anybody else's OpenStack implementation.
It's got those bits of eucalyptus which they acquired last year.
Yeah. So that means it might conceivably integrate nicely with Amazon, or maybe not.
There's an interesting story there as well, because HP sort of like famously said we don't need Amazon, and they sort of like they cut connections to Amazon out for a while, and now they've brought them back, and they're saying that they're gonna arrange new partnerships with people like Microsoft and IBM Software, for example, and other public cloud providers. So it will still be very easy to sort of like have your private cloud on Helion and then burst into public cloud when you need the resources. And they're also saying this is a sign of a renewed focus on sort of hybrid and private cloud. So HP is not doing public anymore. They don't care about that.
Yeah. You want to talk about storage, don't you, Max?
Well, a tiny little bit, if I may.
Tiny little fragments of...
Okay, well, I mean, this is going to have serious implications for the flash industry, because Western Digital just announced it will be buying SanDisk. SanDisk is, last year it was the second largest flash manufacturer. It's got a partnership with Toshiba, the original inventors of flash, and they show sort of like share fabs and building 3D NAND and stuff like that. And Western Digital, which has been big on flash but has had to buy flash from third parties, will now have its own supplier in-house. And well, I mean, what a brilliant move, if I might say so myself. And basically, if I was Seagate, I would be scratching my head and I would be looking at the marketplace, trying to buy whatever I can until it's snapped up by other people. Right.
So from Seagate, we can expect to hear how flash won't kill hard disks. Hard disks are still great.
They've been doing that for a couple of years now, so yes.
Unless they can manage the other alternative, which would be to convince us that they have the technology which will replace flash and make it obsolete overnight.
Yes, and several companies are sort of working in this direction, not least Intel and Micron, who are set to release this 3D X-point memory next year.
Brilliant. Okay, there'll be more on that in future, you can be sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of White Space. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.